Resist your wounds. The desert is treeless, a place of disaffection. Peace and rest can never dwell. Here our pain is ceaseless, remains while we wear the chains of conquest. Layun will drink no other drink but tears, distilled inside that city's crystal eyes. She's wrung with wrongs more than her back can bear. Oh brother, do not say ambition dies.
The hope was to get the story of the Sahrawi people to a wider audience, to hear about it through poetry, but also to, document some of these oral poetry that has always been in the memory of these old people, and it's a way to preserve this tradition. The book was well received here in the camps. We've got a very official ceremony to present the book, in which we were honored with the presence of these poets, Beibu, Badi, Bashir Wildali. It was such an honor to see these old people come, despite the fact that Beibu, who looked very sick and he's much older, but he came to the presentation, and he even participated in the presentation. All of them read pieces of the poetry they gave us, and that was amazing, I think.
It was amazing. I mean, seeing Beibu perform Dre Mirza, and so many people in the audience, I could see them knew the words, and they're sort of doing it along with it. It was like a rock concert, People had their hands in the air and stuff, like when he was doing his poem. And I think to be put on that stage, and if in any way the fact that this book's been able to be published in the UK, in any way elevates the work of these poets, I think is a great service, because they are genuinely great poets, and that's obvious to me. And the book launch in the UK was good. We did it in a quite a sort of well-known London venue. Had 300 people come. I think about half of them bought a book there and then. And we were able to bring down Mohammed Limam from the Polisario in London, Brahim Buhaya from Saharawi Voice, who's in London at the moment, John Hillary, who's the director of War on Want, who are a really good charity who work with global issues of global justice, including Western Sahara, and to take part in an olive branch as well, and they came and took part in a discussion. We showed photos from the camps, and we had question and answer for people there, and so everybody who saw it, everybody who came was really positive about the event and about the book, and what I hope is that it highlights the issue of injustice of the situation of Western Sahara. It seems to me that any way you present it, unless in real propaganda, then the issue is clear. The issue of justice and injustice is clear, and I hope that it helps in some way to get people to mobilise a little bit. That's what in the UK and wherever else it's being read. To work with the translator had to be someone who has a feeling for poetry, someone who responds in that way. So we were able to discuss interpretations of the poems, and then so I could use what I understood of how British poetry works and how British or English language audiences understand poetry, to try and take that meaning that you had helped me see and try and bring it into a form that they would understand, that would open up this culture to them in a way that was closed otherwise.
The poets were present with the Sahrawi people throughout the whole this challenging dilemma that the Sahrawi people found themselves in, trying to liberate the land, trying to find their voice and their freedom and prove their existence in the face of the invasion of two powerful military countries, and in the face of, there were just Bedouins and simple peaceful people, but I think they've done well. It was amazing what they could do. They could also preserve the identity of the Sahrawi people through all the stories and the feelings and the notions that all compose what it means to be a Sahrawi. It was also, poetry was served this cause not just by expressing these things, but it was also the fuel to music, because music was very connected to poetry. In fact, they often this was originally the tradition. They worked together.
Yeah.
So poets would provide the lyrics to the singers, and the singers would sing those lyrics, and that's partly also how poetry was spread through the society. So it was often a collaboration.
And it seems like the revolutionary changes that Saharawi society underwent, and that individuals underwent, going from shepherds to fighters, or to to be part of the resistance in whatever way they were, also happened with poetry as well. So all the poets we spoke to would say the same thing, that poetry used to be about the land. It was about love, praise of a woman or a lover, or
individual experiences.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it became something that was part of the cause, and the poetry. And I think it's really, Bayabu said to us that, or maybe it was the first time I was there, before I was working with you, he said the time of the fighting was the time when poetry really flourished. Mm-hmm. It was sort of like the sort of golden age, I suppose, of poetry. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of interesting to me, because you might assume that in a war there isn't so much time for art, but actually the nature of the war and the spirit that was engendered seems to have brought poetry along with it and brought culture along with it. I just learned so much, really. I mean, for me it was a whole new culture that I was coming to know a little bit, and so in the course of that I learned a whole load of facts and history, and that through my own research and through talking to people I learned about a whole new way of doing things. There's some people that you can be in the presence of, especially elders that you can be in the presence of, you really feel like you learn from everything, from their manner, from the things as well as from the things that they say. Mm-hmm. And one thing Baby said to me was that you must study poetry until it becomes part of yourself. And I feel like with him it's like his poetry is a kind of refined talk. It's conversational. It's almost difficult to hear when he moves from talking to poetry. I mean, obviously it's I don't understand the language, but normally you can tell, okay, someone's reciting. But with Bayabu, it's just part of his conversation. Mm-hmm. And to make poetry not this sort of elevated language, but like elevated conversation, like elevated ordinary talk. Mm-hmm. That was like, just in terms of that poetry, that was something that really impressed me. Yeah. Particulars. For 40 years the people have waited, fighting an opponent who will not withdraw, while the one-eyed giants of the flesh-fed kingdoms hold back the waves which could have swept clean the sands when the sun finally set on the long day of empire. How can you turn a blind eye to the particulars? Green columns of figures fluctuate senselessly on flickering screens. In 5 fateful years, $1 billion changed hands as dance partners change and form new lines. See how round and round they rotate, $360 a minute. And in return, back from across the Atlantic came packages of cluster bombs and heavy armored cars, Cobra helicopters fitted to spit their bitter venom, hard-wearing tanks and airborne radar. Picture the dock workers who unloaded crates of artillery, the boats that rode the ocean carrying supersonic jets to thunder over a nomadic enemy, the men who laid ground sensors, transducers to snare the sandaled feet of goat-herd gorillas, and who planted 5 million landmines to decorate a defensive wall. 1,500 miles of wall, the great berm of Morocco, behind which a great blank in the conscience of the world. How can you dim your sight with general trends and figures? How can you turn a blind eye to the particulars? Imagine greybeard Mahfoud in the strength of his youth, roaming for days away from his home, herding camels and goats as all Saharawi know, back before shrapnel embedded in vertebrate bone drained the sap from his trunk so he can't stand on his own. Now his brain flickers like a strip light, eyes that are hollowed by the horrors of the midnight, buried alive in a twilight where the fresh waters of life mingle with the salt of oblivion, waiting for vermilion judgment. Let it fall in molten sulphur.
how vivid the nightmares. Sleep is a memory dim and afar, like the peace of pavilion skies thronging with the lights of a trillion stars.